LA Knight shuts down Jey Uso. Jey Uso gets overpowered on Raw. LA Knight dominates mic battle. Raw crowd reacts to LA Knight. Heated LA Knight vs Jey Uso clash. What happens when confidence meets pure verbal chaos in front of a live crowd that already smells blood in the water? And more importantly, what do you do when the guy standing across from you doesn't just respond, he tears you apart like he's been waiting for this moment all week? Because on this night, Raw didn't feel like just another stop on the calendar. It felt like one of those nights where something was about to snap. You could feel it in the air before anything even happened. The crowd wasn't sitting back comfortably, they were leaning forward, like they knew a storm was coming but didn't know who was about to get hit the hardest. And that's where Jey Uso walked in. Now normally, Jey has that energy. That I belong here, I've seen it all, I've survived everything kind of presence. The crowd usually reacts to him like he's a guy who's been through too many wars to be shaken easily. But tonight? There was a different vibe. Almost like the spotlight was a little too bright, the silence a little too heavy, and the pressure just a little too real. Because standing on the other side of this moment wasn't just any opponent. It was LA Knight. And if you've been watching him lately, you already know what kind of energy he brings. He doesn't just talk. He doesn't just respond. He doesn't just cut promos. No, this guy steps into a mic segment like he's got a personal vendetta against silence itself. Like every word is meant to land with impact, not just fill space. So when he looked at Jey Uso on that stage, you could almost tell, this wasn't going to be respectful. This wasn't going to be back and forth. This wasn't going to be one of those polite wrestling arguments where both guys shake hands at the end. No. This was going to get personal. The moment the exchange started, you could feel the shift. It wasn't loud at first. It wasn't explosive right away. It was that slow build, like a match being struck but not fully lit yet. Jey tried to hold his ground, as he always does. Calm voice. Controlled energy. That I've been here before attitude. But LA Knight wasn't interested in pacing. He jumped in like he was already mid-rant, like the conversation had started 10 minutes earlier and we just happened to tune in late. And that's where things started slipping for Jey. Because LA Knight doesn't just argue with you, he studies you while doing it. He watches your reactions, your pauses, your breathing. It's like he's picking apart your confidence piece by piece while smiling through it. And the more Jey tried to respond, the more the crowd started reacting in a way that wasn't exactly helping him. You know that crowd noise that starts as curiosity, then turns into amusement, then slowly turns into oh no, he's in trouble? Yeah. That. LA Knight started turning the entire arena into his background noise. Every sentence he delivered felt like it had weight behind it, like he wasn't just speaking, he was building pressure in the room. And Jey started getting pushed into that uncomfortable space where every comeback feels just a little too slow. And that's dangerous in wrestling promos. Because timing is everything. There was a moment where Jey tried to fire back, tried to re-establish control, tried to remind everyone who he is. But LA Knight didn't even pause. Didn't even flinch. He just cut right through it like it didn't matter. And the crowd noticed. That's the worst part. Because fans don't need commentary. They don't need explanations. They can feel when someone is losing control of a segment. And slowly, you could hear it in their reactions. The balance was shifting. Now let's be real for a second, Jey Uso is not someone you casually embarrass on the mic. This is a guy who has stood in some of the biggest moments WWE has thrown at him. He's been in pressure situations where most people would fold instantly. But this wasn't about history. This wasn't about resume. This was about momentum in real time. And LA Knight had it. Every time Jey tried to reset the conversation, LA Knight dragged it right back into chaos. It wasn't just insults. It wasn't just catchphrases. It was control. He was controlling pace, tone, reaction, everything. And at some point, you start noticing something subtle. Jey stops talking as much. Not because he has nothing to say, but because every opening gets shut down before it fully forms. That's when the crowd starts reacting differently. The cheers for Jey turn into mixed reactions. Not full boos, not full support, just that uneasy sound of people watching momentum slip away in real time. And LA Knight? He's loving it. Not in a cartoon villain way. More like a guy who knew exactly what was going to happen the moment he stepped out there. Like he didn't come to compete in a promo battle, he came to dominate one. And at one point, it almost felt like he stopped addressing Jey as an equal altogether. That's when the tone shifts. That's when it stops being a rivalry and starts becoming a statement. Because LA Knight wasn't just arguing anymore. He was setting a tone for the entire division. Like he was saying, this is my space now. If you can't keep up, you get left behind. Jey tried to regain footing again, and to his credit, he didn't back down. That's important to say. He didn't run. He didn't disappear. He stood there and took it. But sometimes standing your ground isn't enough when the ground itself is shaking. And LA Knight kept talking. And talking. And talking. At one point, the crowd started reacting before Jey even spoke, like they already knew what was coming next. That's when you know a segment has tilted heavily in one direction. It's no longer about debate. It's about endurance. How long can you stand there before the moment swallows you? And Jey Uso, for all his toughness, was now in survival mode on the mic. Now imagine that for a second. A guy who thrives on intensity, energy, and crowd connection, reduced to reacting instead of leading. That's what LA Knight was doing. He wasn't just winning the exchange, he was reshaping how the exchange felt. And then came that stretch in the segment where everything slowed just enough for the weight to hit. No yelling. No interruptions. Just LA Knight speaking directly, cleanly, confidently, while Jey stood across from him absorbing every word like it was meant to land exactly where it hurt most. And the crowd? Silent enough to hear it. That's the kind of moment fans remember later and go, yeah, that was the point it flipped. You can almost hear the internet already reacting before the segment even ended. Clips being clipped. Tweets being typed. Fans already arguing about whether this was a burial or just LA Knight doing what he does best. And that's the thing about wrestling moments like this. They don't just stay in the arena. They travel. They become debates. They become arguments in comment sections, group chats, and fan forums. Some people will say Jey got exposed.